So today we got another teaser for the Ether Storyline's last map, of course DLC 4, which we don't have a name for just yet, but regardless, the teaser we got today is one of my favorite teasers that we've got so far, and it's not because I guess that it's the most, has the biggest reveal in it, or it's even the coolest. What I really like about it instead is that it takes some big brain moves to actually figure out what's going on here, and actually leads us into some theories of what could be going on the map, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. But currently what I've been seeing on the internet just related to this, it seems like there's a major misconception with who's talking in this, and I'll be explaining that in this video. But quickly before we get into anything, I want to say that I didn't make a video on yesterday's teaser because it was really face value, but I just wanted to acknowledge its existence. But if you guys haven't seen any of my other videos talking about the other teasers or even the intro cutscenes, then you guys can find those all on my channel, cards, description, all that good stuff. But regardless, I really want to talk about the teaser we got today, and to do that I want to actually play it for you guys in its entirety, because today Treyarch tweeted out a 15-second video and I just want to play that for you guys right here.
We created Ascension on the principle of being better men, of making this world a better place. If this blood is key to unlocking the future, we would be fools to not take this opportunity.
So what was being said here is super interesting. I really want to get into that, but first I want to talk about what we saw, like what's going on here, because this looks like it's from in-game. I think we all agree this is probably a part of the map, but a couple things to mention here is that we see a waterfall, so that's cool. I mean, people are saying that maybe a waterfall from the original Call of Dead. I don't know, I don't really see it, but maybe that's that. And also along the wall we see 115 kind of looks like it's growing like vines or something like that along the walls, which is interesting. But one thing that I want you to actually take notice to is at the bottom of the screen, you see some wooden railing with a rope in between them. And this is actually something we saw in the original Call of the Dead with the path that leads up to the lighthouse. So we do see that, but again, nothing confirmed there. And of course, in the top left corner, we see a little piece of the sky, and the sky is actually pink. And assuming there's nothing supernatural or sci-fi happening there, then this looks like the map may be set at dawn. So that would be something that's really cool. I don't think we've ever had a map set at dawn, so that would be cool to see. But that's all I can really say about this, and all I really want to say about this, because now I want to get into what was actually being said. But funnily enough, we can't actually jump right into that, because we first have to figure out who's saying it, because a lot of people are kind of confused with who's even talking here, and a lot of people are saying that it's Gersh or even Yuri, and the thing is, I don't think it's either of them, and I'll explain why that's the case in a little bit. But first we have to look at the hints they gave us for who this is. And first thing you would notice is that they have a Russian accent, and also they mention Ascension. And of course, this is the reason why people jump to Yuri and Gersh. And I want to explain why it's not either of them. And the first one, I'll start off with Gersh. So first things first, it sounds nothing like Gersh. We've heard Gersh multiple times. He does not sound anything like this at all. So I think we can scratch that one off. But again, if that's not enough for you guys, then I gotta say Gersh is not anywhere else except stuck in Gorod Krovi, because you have to remember we're in a broken cycle universe and we never went to Gorod Krovi, so he should still be floating around Gorod Krovi and not really doing much. So we could get Gersh out of here for multiple reasons. Now, Yuri on the other hand is a little bit different, because in the original timeline, he was just left at the Pentagon. That's kind of what happened with him. He never really popped up in the story after that, but this time around we are in a broken cycle universe, and because of that we saw in the intro cutscene, the classified, that Samantha told him to go somewhere else. So Samantha told him to come over here to DLC 4, right? Well, no, because we know she told him to go to Alpha Omega, and in Alpha Omega, he was interrogated by Purnell multiple times until he died. So he's dead, so it's not him either. That leaves us with the problem. It's actually the reason why this video took so long to come out, because it took me a while to figure out who this was also, and that's when I started paying more attention to what was said at the start. And it's when the person talking says, "We created Ascension," and it finally clicked for me that this is someone else. And if you want to figure out who this is, you could just jump over the timeline and look at this spot right here, and it says January 29th, 1946. As their US counterparts, the Soviets hire many former Group 935 scientists. Among them is Harvey Yena, who forms the Ascension group. And this is exactly exactly who's talking here, and the reason being is because the person says in the teaser that we created Ascension, and in the timeline it says Harvey Yena, who forms the Ascension group. So right there I think confirms that this is Harvey Yena. But there's still more to Harvey Yena, because even if I tell you this is Harvey Yena, like, a lot of people are going to say, who is that? And I'll actually give you a little background, because as you can tell, he was a former Group 935 scientist, and he's actually the one who made the Scavenger. And as you guys know, the Scavenger is a wonder weapon from Call of the Dead. So another connection to Call of the Dead, again, probably confirming we're going to Call of the Dead for the billionth time. But of course, that's not what we're talking about here. But after Group 935 was dissolved after World War II, this is of course when the Soviet Union went and got him, and of course he created the Ascension group for them, and that's pretty much his story. But the thing is that it gets a little complicated here, because we have a different version of Harvey Yena from the Fractures universe, and this one is a little different because what he did, and from what we know, is that he stayed a Group 935 scientist and actually worked with Division 9 and helped Group 935 with the Dragons siege Stalingrad. And this is the reason why the Battle of Stalingrad is happening the way it is, because he used the Dragons that were supplied to him by Division 9 to attack the Russians, and he's the reason why this whole battle is going on inside Gorod Krovi. And the thing is, that's where his story ends in the Fractures. So I don't really see as the Fractures version of Harvey Yena having anything to do with who's talking here. Probably his story just ends there in Gorod Krovi and we're never going to see him again. So I think it's much more likely that we're talking about the original timeline, Harvey Yena, and not the one that had anything to do with dragons. So we could get that out of the way. So with that understanding now that the person talking here is Harvey Yena from the original timeline, we could further explore what he says inside this teaser. And the most important thing he says is right at the end, where he says, if this blood is key to unlocking the future, we would be fools not to take this opportunity. And this is really interesting, because I personally didn't ever expect to see the blood back in the storyline, but here it is, and it's coming back from a character that really hasn't had any significance in the storyline until now. So, you know, it is really interesting. But how did he figure out the blood was powerful and had some sort of value to it? Because if you remember from the Blood of the Dead Maxis radios, he actually explains how someone's blood becomes special or valuable, and this is of course when someone travels through space, time, or dimensions, their blood automatically has some sort of special element to it now and can be used to do a lot of different things. And also, the more you travel through time and space and dimensions, the more powerful your blood gets, and of course is the reason why we use Primus Richtofen's blood inside the ending to Blood of the Dead, because it was just very, very powerful blood. Again, besides the points, but still, it's still relevant to what we're talking about here. So we have to figure out how he figured this out, and most likely he figured this out by testing on somebody. And we think about all the different characters that have traveled through space, time, or dimensions, and of course you can think of the Mob of the Dead crew, the Shadows of Evil crew. They're probably not the ones he had anything to do with. And also Yuri traveled through space and time, but then again he's dead, and he's probably, you know, just dead at Alpha Omega or Camp Edward, so again not him. So I think much more likely is that it has to do with one of our current crews, or the major crews in our story, and that would be rather Primus, Ultimus, or Victus. And honestly, I don't think it's Primus. I mean, we have no reason to believe he had anything to do with Primus. Maybe Great War Primus had something to do with it. I doubt it though, but you know, let's just kind of scratch off Primus out of this. But then we have Ultimus, and Ultimus seems like our most likely case scenario because they were kind of around during the same time, right? But the problem is that he never really, you know, had Ultimus to even do any tests on them. I mean, if this was the Americans from the Pentagon saying this, then I would say right away, yeah, this has to be Ultimus, and that's how they figured it out, because we do know for a fact from the conversational quotes inside Alpha Omega that the Americans did tests on Ultimus. So if it was them, that would make sense. But then again, that was the Americans, not Harvey Yena, who of course was with the Soviet Union and Ascension. So again, kind of run into a wall there. But this leaves us with Victus, and surprisingly, I think Victus is the most likely one out of all of them, even though it seems like at first glance that is the opposite of the case, and they would seem like the least likely one. But the reason I think that they may be it is because of a cipher from Gorod Krovi, and I want to read for you guys, because for the longest time with this cipher we thought it meant something else, but this would give entirely new meaning to it. But what it says is, finally the lab is almost complete. Security measures have been put in place, so the chance of detection by the Americans is very unlikely. We have also several agents agents embedded with their staffs as insurance. We will keep the individuals on stasis, on ice to speak, and continue the specimen rotation once we finish drawing more power from the drill. Oh, I almost forgot. The sequencing for the current blood samples is as follows: SSMJABR. And the reason that this is relevant is because what's said at the end, of course, talking about the blood samples and of course the sequence being SSMJABR, because if you guys didn't know, that sequence of letters at the end are actually in the initials of all the Victus characters, starting with Samuel Stullinger. And what we originally thought was happening with this is that this was Richtofen. He built the lab under Alcatraz and then was sequencing the blood of Victus, and that was kind of our idea. But the thing is that there was no real reason for Richtofen to sequence their blood. I mean, it didn't make sense because he already got their blood and gave them to the rest of Primus, so why would he now need to sequence their blood? It just didn't make too much sense. But this is where it gets interesting, and keep in mind, right now we're starting at getting into a theory. This isn't no longer explaining, this is getting into a theory. Make no mistake about it, but still, I do want to talk about this because the thing is that in the comics, we saw that Victus were put on stasis somewhere besides Alcatraz, and it seemed like it was the house. But inside the timeline and even in-game, we most definitely saw that Victus was put in stasis in Alcatraz, and this has been something we have questioned for a long time. I mean, how are Victus in stasis at what looks like under the house or the basement of the house, and also they're in stasis in Alcatraz? It just didn't make too much sense, so we're kind of confused why this was the case. And a lot of people, when they first saw this, kind of drew this off as a mistake inside the comics, but then Jason Blundell himself said that that was no mistake. And this is where it gets really interesting, because the idea that there may be two versions of Victus going around, and if you could want to stretch this theory even out even further, is that one version of Victus did the Max's side of everything, and the other version of Victus did the Richtofen side of everything. Of course, I'm not going to get into that part of it, but that is a further part of this theory. But for now, we're going to return to what we're saying, where there's two different versions of Victus, and one of them, of course, were the ones under Alcatraz, and this other set of Victus were actually obtained by the Ascension group, and this is where they were tested on, and where Harvey Yena learned of the value of their blood and why it's powerful. And this is where Harvey Yena did tests on them to learn that their blood was valuable, and this would maybe explain it. Again, that's a theory part of it. I don't want to confuse with any story explanation parts, but that could be what's going on here. I mean, it would explain why Harvey Yena would know of the blood and its value, and also it would kind of give like a proper explanation to this cipher, because it's always been something that we kind of figured we knew the answer to it, but there's always a problem with it that never sat too well. But if this is it, then maybe now we have some better explanation to it. But if this is true, then, you know, there's another part of this cipher that mentions them drawing power from the drill. So maybe the drill is finally also going to be explained inside DLC 4, because that's been a big question mark ever since Black Ops 2. But regardless, that's all I really have to say. If you guys did enjoy the video and you like content like this and you guys are really excited for DLC 4, then you guys know I'm going to be covering all of that, all of the future teasers, all of the future trailers, intro cutscenes, whatever they may be. I'm going to be covering all of them, and of course the launch of the map, I'm definitely going to be covering that. So if you guys are excited for that and you want to see more content like that, definitely like, subscribe, bell, share, and all that great stuff. But I'm going to go, and I'll catch you guys in an extreme video or whatever it may be, and laters, guys.